This episode of Bend the Knee is brought to you by Maester Deshane, whose words are the flame and the void.
Hello and welcome to Bend the Knee, a Song of Ice and Fire podcast. I am Sir Matt, the Bud Knight.
And I am Sir Ezra the Watchful. Welcome to our Song of Ice and Fire book club. Today we are into Chapter 12, Eddard 2 of A Game of Thrones, and Aenys 1 in A World of Ice and Fire.
Yeah.
We've got some exciting stuff today in the show, Sir Matt. We've got some new stuff that we want to kind of throw in here at the end, and some fun stuff in Small Council today.
Yeah.
So
it's true. Yeah. So should we go ahead and plug the phone number and where you can reach us at?
Yeah, go ahead and we always put this at the beginning just so it's easy to find. You can send us a, what do you call that, like a voice raven? I don't know.
It's a voice raven, or it's a message through the Weirwood network.
Right, there you go. Okay, yeah. All right, you can send that or make that through this number, 614-547-2350. You can also send us a raven at btkcast@gmail.com.
All right. Small Council. So I dug deep, and I traversed all over the realm, and there's really no show news or book news. Things are quiet. I feel like there's a storm coming, but right now it's a little quiet.
Yes.
Nothing really to do. So Sir Ezra and I did catch up on some other
news.
Yeah, some other royal decrees and events happening this weekend.
Yeah, we did.
And guys, can I just say that the only weddings I like are red weddings?
Yeah.
So
Let's go.
I mean, here's my question.
Yeah.
The royal wedding.
Mm-hmm.
Did we authorize that?
I don't know.
I
don't know where they get off,
yeah.
to be honest with you.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, the queen can come bend the knee. Okay. To our British listeners, I apologize. We're as we say often here, we are ignorant Americans.
We are.
Okay,
guys, we're just humble hedge knights too.
Yeah.
So we really.
Yeah, I mean, so Kate, or not Kate Middleton.
Right.
That's what team I'm on. Just like I'm on Team Yanny, okay?
Right. Yeah,
I support House Yanny, and
House
I support
Yanny.
House, Kate Middleton over House Merkel.
Yep.
But yeah, I'm just so Meghan Merkel is an American.
Mm-hmm.
So does she now?
Right.
How does that work?
What if she wants to run for president?
Yeah.
What are we going to do?
Can she? I feel like there's a lot of
She's a citizen.
I feel like there's a lot of taxation going on and no representation.
Right.
I might go to Boston right now and start dumping tea in the harbor over this.
I'm feeling it. I'm feeling an itch for some tea.
I am too. All I know is that it occupied all of the weekend. It's all everyone was talking about.
It sure did. Man, it's the kingdom seems like it's in good spirits.
I guess, yeah.
And I think that makes the rest of the world happy. So it's good. It's not. We'll let it stand.
Yeah, I suppose.
So I suppose. All right. In other news,
yes,
there is an order out there, and they go by the name, the Order of the Green Hand.
Yeah.
And now, here's what I'll say, guys. I am so fired up after their last episode.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I made 2 gracious plugs on this show.
We've made a couple.
I don't know if people forgot what the name of this show is.
Yeah.
But could you please remind us, Sir Matt?
Yeah, when we were coming up with the name for this show, we specifically chose this name, and we used the Targaryen banner. So many other people, and we love the Starks. We love we love the Baratheons.
Sure.
I'm even fine with the Greyjoys. Okay, I mean they fail a lot, but I'm fine with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But we specifically chose the Targaryens because, well, one, they're the real kings, and two, it's about bending the knee. we're not here to play nice with other podcasts or YouTube channels.
Yeah.
We're out to be the best.
Well, and here's the thing. So I was playing nice, when I
Yeah.
you see something and you say, "Hey, that's cool. We like that, etc." But when you go and make the statements that they made in their Aegon Conquest video
That they surprisingly did
right
after
we did ours. I don't know, man. And also, they made a big push here, a big apology, right? That they didn't do it earlier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they just seem to do it. It's okay.
They seem to mention like exactly the same things we were mentioning.
Yeah, but then
you might say, well, that's because it's coming out of the book. But no, they took it a step further.
Yeah, and then they started making absolutely false claims.
They started perverting it.
Yeah, now I'm
That's
fine.
what I call it.
Now I'm fine with some people. They are big believers in this whole Shara Dane, Ned Stark is the parents of Jon Snow, and that's fine. And they will go as far as to claim it. They'll say they just say this is how it is, and I'm fine with that.
Sure.
But in their most recent video, that they essentially stole from us. You can't steal from the crown. Okay?
I'm sorry. Yeah. No.
Yeah. As we'll get to later, a lot of our listeners have sworn fealty to us.
They have,
and they said this is the only podcast I mean to bend my knee to. So we'll get to that later.
I swear to you, I swear by the old gods and
the new. Okay.
That if they try this again, I'll call the banners.
Yeah, I will.
I will call the banners on their asses
it's
so fast.
It's okay. Here at Bend the Knee, we don't call in, we call out. Okay. This is a royal decree.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Fool me once, shame on You can't fool me twice.
That's right. That's what he said.
Okay.
Our great president.
Yeah.
So, anyways, just a little warning to them because I know they're listening. Okay. I know they're listening to Bend the Knee. So, we're coming for you.
Yeah.
Just wait till we post our theory.
Yeah.
Which again, guys, we're working on. A couple announcements as we go forward. Let's see here. We've got. Oh boy. So, to further explain the Black Council, which is our Patreon exclusive series, which is airing June 1st.
I believe it's airing Memorial Day.
Memorial Day?
Yeah.
Is it really? Okay, cool. Perfect. Perfect. Matt knows.
Which is next Monday.
Next Monday. That's perfect.
Everyone has the day off.
Yeah, it's perfect. It's perfect.
Yeah.
So that's on patreon.com/bend the knee. We are basically taking the last 4 chapters that we've done in A World of Ice and Fire, picking a person, an event, a location, or something, one of those cool connection pieces, and we are going hard to the wall on this.
Yeah, we're going down the deepest of rabbit holes because that's
right.
what people say they like.
Yeah, so we're going there. So we just want to give you that quick tidbit there. Also, those of you who have pledged as on our Patreon, please send us your Westerosi title and house words. We are going to cycle back through everybody that we have. It's just kind of cooler to wait until you guys have sent us your words to give that quick shout out.
And we can help with that because some people have said I don't really know what to put.
Sure,
and so we can help you come up with stuff.
Yeah. Just message Sir Matt or I, and we'll get that going for you guys. So because we definitely want to give you a shout out. We just think it's cool. We can have your title and we can have your words in there. So
yes.
All right. Anything else for the small council business?
No, I believe that is it.
Okay. We are into the Maester's study.
Yes.
Which has become one of my favorite parts of the show.
It has, yeah. And I think it's becoming a lot of other people's favorite parts because it's getting a lot of traction. A lot of people are messaging us about it.
Right. I think it's the...
I'm actually starting to believe that the Maester study and Follow-Up Friday are now bigger and more sought after than the reread itself. Yeah, it's just in part of the comments that I get.
Yeah. Same here. But,
and our Follow-Up Friday episode are starting to, in terms of the downloads and numbers, they're actually starting to beat the main series,
which is fine because you take those topics and that Follow-Up Friday can go anywhere from ancient history to speculating to the end of the season or the series.
Right.
So there's that. I know who really does like the Maester study, the Order of the Green Hand.
Yeah, apparently.
I'm sick and tired of that. It's the last time I'm mentioning them on this podcast ever again. All right. Aenys Targaryen.
I demand a trial by combat.
You want to?
When
we call the banners, I will. Justice will be served. I swear to you. If you want a trial by 7, you let me know. Okay. I will have.
We'll call the banners.
I'll be one of your 7.
Okay.
So, okay. Aenys Targaryen. So last week we went over Aegon the Conqueror, correct? And this one is a little bit shorter. But let's get into what we learned about Aenys Targaryen here. Aenys first.
Yeah, can I just read I'll just go ahead and read the first passage here.
Yeah.
When the dragon passed away at the age of 46, his reign had been uncontested by all save the Dornishmen. He had ruled wisely, showing himself well during his royal progresses, displaying due deference to the high septums, rewarding those who served well and aiding those who required it. Yet beneath the surface of his largely peaceful rule was a rolling cauldron of dissent. In their hearts, many of his subjects still cherished the old days when the great houses ruled their own domains with unquestioned sovereignty. Others wished vengeance for loved ones killed in the wars, and still others saw the Targaryens as abominations, brothers wed to sisters, with their incestuous couplings producing misbegotten heirs. The strength of Aegon and his sisters and their dragons had been enough to subdue those who opposed them, but the same could not be said for their heirs. It was Aenys, Aegon's firstborn, by his beloved Rhaenys, who came to the throne in the year 37 AC at the age of 30. He was crowned with a great ceremony in the Red Keep in the midst of its construction, donning an ornate golden crown rather than his father's circlet of Valyrian steel.
Okay, good. We'll take a quick pause from the reading there because I wanted to mention here, so for 37 years... essentially, is that when he was?
Yes.
He was crowned, correct?
Yeah, he was born, I believe. It doesn't. I don't know if it actually.
It does say in the previous chapter, I think.
Yeah, he was born around, I believe, 11 AC.
Okay, and
that would make sense, right? 11. Yeah.
Yeah, sure,
something like that.
And born to Rhaenys.
Yes.
Which is very important to mention.
Yes.
So the youngest of the Targaryens, Aegon's firstborn.
Yes.
Correct? And born to Rhaenys. So for 37 years, you've got some solid reign going on there.
Yes.
The kingdom is essentially was ruled well, and not much was really, there might have been some grumblings, and maybe, in secret, the great lords were reminiscing about the days of old, right?
Mm-hmm.
When they were kings, So it's still pretty fresh, but there wasn't much trouble. There was, Aegon seemed to rule his kingdom pretty well.
Right.
So, and that is not necessarily the case for Aenys.
Or most any other king that comes.
And that's what they said.
After,
and Gur mentioned in the last chapter that going forward, they all they struggle to keep it together. And it's a task. But again, it's, Robert Baratheon and everyone they're having their own troubles,
right?
Keeping the peace, and rebellions come up. The Greyjoys rebel, and you put it down. That's what you do.
Yeah, all the time you'll have tiny little rebellions and stuff like that. We'll get to it later, but actually, I'll make. I believe this reminds me a lot of Rome when Octavius then becomes Augustus. Caesar kind of is the first emperor of Rome. Kind of takes charge, and everything's kind of cool under his reign, and then as you get to his death, that's when kind of like things start getting shifted around. You get some crazy people and stuff like that. But we'll get to that
now. Yeah, exactly. We will. One other thing too. There's the mention of he has put away the ruby crown.
Yeah.
So he's using the Valyrian steel crown. He's donning an ornate golden crown rather than his father's crown, which is interesting. Right.
Yeah.
There's your first misstep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So but through his father and brother Maegor, who was Visenya's child, were both warriors born. Aenys was made of different stuff. He had begun life as a weak and sickly infant and remained so throughout his earliest years. Rumors abounded that he could be no true son of Aegon the Conqueror, who had been a warrior without peer. In fact, it was well known that Queen Rhaenys delighted in some handsome singers and witty mummers. Perhaps one of these might have fathered the child, but the rumors dampened and eventually died when the sickly child was given a young hatchling who was named Quicksilver. And as the dragon grew, so too did Aenys.
Good, and that's important to note. The birth of Quicksilver, the dragon, because that will come up later.
Yes.
Actually.
And something else I want to make a connection here.
Yep.
As when we get to the end of this chapter, we will get into Maegor. Doesn't this also kind of remind you of another kind of two sons? Daemon and Darren, where who like should
right? Who
you have a warrior one and another one who's kind of bookish, and
yes, it does
some political backstabbing and stuff going on to decide to see who should be the rightful heir.
Right, and I think Aenys. They mentioned that the company that his mother kept. Well, she liked poets and singers and witty mummers herself. So I don't necessarily mean that. I think that's more that he got that from his mother, from Rhaenys, is just the way I kind of see that. She's sometimes your parents can be sort of this mirror, and you pick up some of what they're interested in. So definitely is born of Rhaenys Targaryen. So that is clear. But people love to sort of spread the idea that, well, maybe he wasn't. And so that starts from the beginning, know. So you see right out the get-go this person couldn't possibly be born of, there's no way,
Right. Well, it's right. So you have Aegon who essentially claims the throne and then has a pretty good rule, and then immediately once he's gone, descent is, and you see kind of political backstabbing. If you think like George Washington, right? George Washington becomes president, and then he's like, I don't think we should have political parties. And the second he leaves, well, then we have political parties, and that sets us up for everything we've had since.
Right.
So it's just kind of how it works when you have revolutions or conquests or whatever.
Absolutely, yes. So let's get into now a little bit of the troubles that sort of plagued Aenys' his rule. Okay. We'll talk about there's some marriage stuff that happens here at the end of the chapter that's interesting, issues with the High Septon and things like that. But first, if you remember Hair in the Black, right, from a couple episodes or from a couple chapters ago, Aegon ended his line.
Yeah.
Correct?
Well,
that's what he said.
Yeah.
That's what he said. He took Balerion, high up into the sky, came back down, and ended it. Mm-hmm. Okay?
Or so the Maesters told us.
That is what they told us. You're right. And he said he would. He said this day, your line will end. And so after the Conqueror's death, it didn't take long before the challengers to the Targaryen rule emerged. The first of these was the bandit and outlaw named Harren the Red. And Harren the Red basically goes back to Harrenhal and sort of takes over there. Actually,
which right now, that's the worst thing you could do, because that place, as we know later, is cursed, and everyone who takes over Harrenhal has pretty bad luck. Right.
Yes. Right now, I think the person who is holding that, Lord Garin, is that how you say it? Lord. Yeah. So he's known as Garin the Guest.
Is it Gargan?
Is it Gargan?
Gargon.
Lord Gargan. Oh, let's go with that. Gargan.
Gargan.
Yeah. Sorry. Lord Gargan. So Lord Gargan the Guest. Basically, he's known for attending these weddings, right? Where he goes and he takes
his exercise right to the first night.
Yeah, he's having a good time. You know, the bedding ceremony.
Right.
That's all he's there for. Mm-hmm. So, not a nice guy, right? And the Harren the Red goes in and basically kills him. So, takes back Harrenhal. And as this is going on, basically there at River Run, the king is there with Lord Tully. This is a characteristic of Aenys. Aenys wanted he wanted to please everyone. He wanted to make sure everyone was happy, enjoyed him and his reign. He didn't want to make anybody mad.
Right.
So he's very indecisive, and that sort of cost him and Tully here, because they weren't able to go in and get the Red Heron when he was at Harrenhal. So they had to. He actually ends up being, of the uprisings that Aenys faces, Harren the Red is the last one that he will actually be able to. Well, not even Aenys himself necessarily, but the last one that is put down, so to speak, during his reign.
Right.
Okay, so let's go into the next one. Who do we got next? We had a couple more.
After
Harren the Red.
Then the chapter kind of talks about more rebels soon appeared in the Vale and the Iron Islands, while a Dornishman naming himself the Vulture King gathered thousands of followers to stand against the Targaryens. Grandmaster Gawain wrote that the king was stunned by this news, for Aenys fancied himself beloved of the commons. Mm-hmm. And then you have him, and you have who is the other one? The Dornish one. As for the Vulture King, no, I don't see the Dornish one.
You mean the Dornish, that's just the Vulture King.
Oh, yeah.
So, so what you have going on in the Vale is you have Jonas Aaron basically. He basically goes in, and that's the rebellion that's happening in the Vale. So right now you have in the Riverlands, you've got the Red Heron running around like crazy.
Right.
Down in Dorne, you've got the Vulture King, who rose, I believe, 30-some thousand to his cause. And then over in the Vale, you have Jonas Aaron, who imprisons his own brother, Lord Ronald. And then basically, as soon as he does that, he sort of
kicks him at the moon door.
Well, yeah, but he kind of recalls him. He's afraid that the Red Heron and his men might infiltrate. I'm sorry. So to deal with that, Aenys, this is his indecisiveness. When Jonas imprisons his brother, he sends a fleet up to the Vale, and then he has to recall them. He calls them back because he doesn't know where Heron the Red is.
Right.
So he wants them back. So he goes to deal with it. No, wait, call them back because I want to protect King's Landing just in case something happens. So super kind of indecisive, and that was really what plagued his reign.
Yeah, and then there's another one, which is just literally one tiny little paragraph here. Meanwhile, in the Iron Islands, a man who claimed to be the King Lodos Reborn was swiftly dispatched by Lord Goran Greyjoy, who sent his pickled head to King Aenys. In return, Aenys granted Goran a boon that Lord Goran used to oust the Faith from the Iron Islands, to the dismay of the rest of the realm.
Yeah. Well, and what that does, I mean, that's interesting. That's where you get the whole. They were never truly happy with the seven. Yeah,
right.
And so that's their chance to kind
of
just
have the drowned god.
Yep, they get a wish granted by the king, and that's like, we don't want the seven here.
Yeah.
So, and good for them. Don't force religion on people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, it's what they want.
It's what you want.
Yeah. So then the chapter kind of goes back to the
Vulture King.
The Vulture King.
And what's interesting about that is you have Princess is it Daria?
Yeah.
So Princess Daria, who basically is the ruling, monarch there,
right?
In Dorne, says, assures Aenys that the Martells, they only desire peace. They're not supporting this Vulture King. Do you believe that, Sir Matt?
The Dornish are kind of, they're snakes.
They are.
Okay, yes. let's just call it like it is.
They're unbent, unbowed, unbroken. Right.
Yeah, they do. They march to the beat of their own drum.
Right. So now the Vulture King has some early success. He has early victories. He's got swelling support, and I think this is where we kind of talked about that he had raised almost, I believe, 30-some thousand. I can't remember. Maybe I'm making that number up here. Let me see. See if you can find it. But to meet that, though, they actually the old hand, Ors Baratheon, and the Marcher Lords, especially Savage Sam Tarly, is called upon to basically combat the Vulture King. I thought this was pretty cool.
Yeah, and he takes Heartsbane, his Valyrian steel sword.
Right, and so this is where we get that reference. We hear this in the series. We know this is Sam Tarly. He's named after, Savage Sam.
Yeah.
So, which is cool.
He is kind of a savage.
Yeah.
Hooking up with wildlings.
Yeah.
Stealing swords and stealing stuff out of the Citadel.
Gosh.
He's kind of a boss.
He is a boss. I love Sam. But this is where you get to sort of see the Tarlys, and then even Sam's father in the main series is they're known for being, good leaders, good military minds, can really, they're important to a lot of different causes throughout this whole series. So
then the chapter, then it kind of gets to it kind of gets back to some more political backstabbing that happens under Aenys, and it gets to kind of the faith, which it kind of reminds me of like season like 5 or 6 or whatever, when Cersei and Tommen and everyone is Marjorie, they're all dealing with the faith.
Right.
Yeah, so with peace established, the king thanked the chief lords and champions who had put down these rebels and enemies of the throne, and the foremost reward went to his brother, Prince Maegor, whom Aenys named the new hand of the king. It seemed at the time the wisest choice, and yet it sowed the seeds that sealed Aenys' doom. Then we kind of have the little passage, like the little tiny passages at the bottom of these where they kind of break off and add some more fluff from like a different maester's perspective.
Yeah, Mr. Glidane.
Yeah. And then it kind of talks. It kind of goes into the Valyrian marriage ceremony. So I'll read that here.
Okay.
Tradition among the Targaryens had always been to marry kin to kin. Wedding brother to sister was thought to be ideal. Failing that, a girl might wed an uncle, a cousin, a nephew, a boy, a cousin, aunt, or niece. This practice went back to the old Valyria, where it was common amongst many of the ancient families, particularly those who bred and rode dragons. The blood of the dragon must remain pure, the wisdom went. Some of the sorcerer princesses also took more than one wife when it pleased them, though this was less common than incestuous marriage. In Valyria, before the Doom, wise men wrote, 1,000 gods were honored, but none were feared, so few dared to speak against these customs. This was not true in Westeros, where the power of the faith went unquestioned. Incest was denounced as vile sin, whether between father and daughter, mother and son, or brother and sister, and the fruits of such unions were considered abominations in the sights of gods and men. With hindsight, it can be seen that this conflict between the faith and the house Targaryen was inevitable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting because that is now basically this idea that that's their tradition, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is the Targaryen, the Valyrian, way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Lannister.
Oh, yeah, right. And now you get into the High Septon was fine,
right?
When Aegon was. And his sisters were on their dragons.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Taken down. I mean, Lord Hightower basically comes out and bends the knee, right, and gives up Old Town and protects. It's
right.
We're all good here, right? And then they crown him. They didn't care that he not only did he marry his sisters, he married both. I mean, he married both of them.
Yeah.
I mean, right. So it's that he has 2
polygamy.
wives.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. And now that was rare. They mentioned that though.
Yeah.
That's not normal necessarily,
Right.
but it matters because that happens here a little bit. With one of Aegon's sons, so interesting. Let's see. So, and just real quickly to mention that the Alan Stokeworth was the one who put down Heron the Red earlier. I forgot to mention that. So he puts that rebellion down, cornered him, and that's what brought the peace back to the Aenys' reign. But like you had said, all of that had sowed a bunch of dissension, and it was very troublesome. So now. It comes down. It's time now that there's peace to make these marriages, right?
Yeah. Right here. Prince Aenys was wed in 22 AC to Alyssa Valerion, the daughter of the king's master of ships and Lord Admiral. Though she was a Targaryen upon her mother's side, this only made her a cousin. But when tradition looked to continue yet again, matters came to a sudden head. Queen Visenya proposed that Maegor be wed to Aenys' first child, Rhaenyra. But the High Septon mounted a vigorous protest, and Maegor was wed instead to the High Septon's own niece, Lady Circe, I guess, of House Hightower. But that proved to be a barren marriage when Aenys bore more fruit, as Rhaenyra was followed by his son and heir Aegon, and later Viserys, Jaehaerys, and Alysanne. So, interesting there, though, that is the High Septon protesting it because it's an incestuous marriage, or is it he protesting it and then suddenly
Lady Cerise of
Hightower. Then of Hightower, then he's to his own niece,
right. And Lady Cerise, so that actually goes on that's a name you'll want to remember, and hopefully we pronounced it right, but it's something that it mentions that she is barren. Mm-hmm. Pay close attention to this later, okay? Is she barren?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll get into that in the next chapter, but Maegor he wants to kind of, he is still subject to his brother Aenys at this time, and so he kind of has to fall in line. But he didn't want this marriage; it was sort of forced upon him, but makes it work, I believe, for the time being.
Yeah.
Anyways, so let's see now. Let's go on a little bit here. So Aenys seemed to content to let the matter lie with Maegor's. Oh, we need to mention just a little bit here what happened right after that. So Maegor actually shocked the realm in 39 AC by announcing that he had taken a second wife.
Yes.
And that's the problem, right? So I mentioned that Lady Cerys is barren, okay? And so he's a little bit jealous. He's a little bit envious of his brother for having all of these children, and continuing the line. They think that's important. They believe that's super important to purify and continue their line. He can't do that. He can't even help. I mean, because if anything, he would want to supply some offspring that could marry into his brother's, line, I guess.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Well, think about this though. Didn't Aegon? So here's a real question. So this is kind of something. So is it his firstborn that has the true reign? Because Aegon marries Visenya, and then also takes Rhaenys as his wife. Mm-hmm. So did he marry them both at the same time, or did he marry one and then the other?
That's a great question.
I don't think
it does say that he took Visenya first because she was older.
Right.
And that was like
then he also takes
Rhaenys out of pleasure.
So the real question is, wouldn't Maegor actually be the true heir? Because it's almost like Rhaenys is his second wife, so shouldn't it be the son, even if it's born out of, in different orders?
I think it just comes down to it. Yeah, right. So that's two different ways of thinking. So is it Aegon's firstborn son, or is it Aegon's firstborn son by his first wife?
Right.
Does that matter? Type of thing is what you're asking.
Yeah.
It's a good question. Yeah, I think the way this will work going forward is it's always the firstborn son of the king. Doesn't matter who his,
whether as long as it's a legitimate son.
Yeah, exactly. As long as it's a legitimate son, then there you go. Exactly. Yeah. So, good freaking question though. So,
see, this is where you get into claims, right? All these different disputed claims based upon different disputed circumstances, and
absolutely. So now he decides to take Elise of House Haraway.
Right.
So that's who, and he does this in secret.
Right. Sounds like somebody else we know.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? It does. Yeah. So he had her wed in the Valyrian ceremony officiated by Queen Visenya, basically, in place of a septon who was willing to wed them. And the public outcry was such that Aenys was finally forced to exile his brother.
Yeah, wow.
And that's pretty
big deal.
Pretty something. Yeah. Because don't forget, actually, I don't remember if it's now or later, but Maegor takes Balerion.
Yeah.
So that was because it's almost like these dragon riders have to kind of make a connection,
right?
To their dragons,
right?
And so Aenys was, I believe, in his crib. It doesn't say this, so I'm definitely speculating here, but that he was.
Wow, word of the green hand.
Watch out, But like when they put Quicksilver, that hatchling in with him, he was sickly as a child, and then as Quicksilver grew, so did he.
Yeah.
Remember that line? Mm-hmm. So I imagine that maybe Maegor didn't have an egg in his, crib growing up, and he got, Balerion.
Yeah.
Which is cool, I think.
Yeah.
Big deal later.
It is.
All right. So Aenys seemed content to let the matter lie with Maegor's exile, but the High Septon was still not satisfied. Are you serious?
Yeah, it doesn't sound surprising.
No, seriously. I mean, you're going to talk about this guy later, right? A little bit?
Yeah.
Okay. Because that's definitely something. Aenys made matters... okay, so here we go. He wants these different appointments. So, let's see. Aenys' new hand could wholly repair the breach with the faith. So what's he trying to do here? He's trying to marry off somebody into Aenys' family. Is that what he's doing? So the High Septon was not satisfied. Not even the appointment of the reputed miracle worker Septon Mermanson as Aenys' new hand could wholly repair the breach of the faith. Okay, so I apologize. The appointment to his council that didn't work either. And in 41 AC, Aenys made matters worse when he chose to wed his eldest daughter, Rhaenyra, to his son and heir Aegon, whom he named Prince of Dragonstone because Maegor, was exiled. So that was pretty bad. And they basically, from that point forward, named Aenys King Abomination, the High Septon from Old Town. So they issued a decree basically calling him King Abomination.
Yeah.
Which is pretty ridiculous, right? So, and the small folk who once were, in love with Aenys and the Targaryens started to kind of turn against him. And that also could have been because of maybe some of the death and his indecisiveness in the realm and not ruling, with this iron fist or whatever, not iron fist, but you know what I mean? Like just,
right.
Ruling supreme and strong. So there's that. Let's see, and then we also have this creates then the warrior's sons. You've got this religious type of the faith started to let's see. For performing ceremonies, zealous poor fellows took up arms, hacking Myrmidon to pieces. A fortnight later, as he was carried by litter across the city, the warrior's sons began to fortify the hill of Rhaenys, making the Sept of Remembrance into a citadel that could stand against the king. Mm-hmm. In addition, some poor fellows attempted to murder the king and his family and the castle itself, scaling its walls, slipping into the royal apartments. It was only thanks to a knight of the King's Guard that the royal family survived. So in all of that, Aenys decides that it's time to abandon this to abandon the city.
Right, yeah.
And head back to the Sage of Dragonstone because it's an island, essentially.
Right.
And now Visenya actually goes with him. So interesting here, she did not go into exile necessarily with her son.
Right.
I believe she has a dragon herself too. We need to check that.
No, she does.
Yeah, she does.
Because all three of them have.
Yeah,
dragon,
I forget what her dragon's name is, but anyway, she definitely is flying back and forth, I think. So she's counseling Aenys to take his dragons and bring fire and blood to both the Starry Sept and the Sept of Remembrance. But again, this is a king who is I don't know, he's not quick to do so. He's not a leader, I guess. He's just not a warrior. He's not into that. He doesn't know how to do that. And
Vhagar is her dragon.
Is her dragon Vhagar?
Yes.
Okay. So instead, the king, who was incapable of making a firm decision, fell ill with painful cramps. Now, Visenya is around. And if you remember in the last chapter, Visenya is into what I would call the dark arts.
Right.
Some sorcery, some, into mixing of, what do you call it? Potions, herbs.
Alchemists.
Yes, yes. And they people were raising the question that when he, dies of these painful.
In later days after Visenya's death, so even way later after her death, it was suggested that King Aenys' sudden demise was Visenya's doing, and some spoke of her as a kinslayer and a kingslayer. Did she not prefer Megar over Aenys in all things? Did she not have the ambition that her son should rule? Why then did she tend to her stepson and nephew when she seemed disgusted with them? Visenya was many things, but a woman capable of pity never seemed to be one of them. It is a question that cannot be readily dismissed, not readily answered.
Yeah. So at the end, he did start to get better under her care. So he was under the care of maesters, and then for a while, he seemed to get a little better with Aunt Visenya, right, around. But then all of a sudden, took a turn for the worst. He actually heard that his son and daughter were at Crackhall Castle, and they had been taken captive, or it was besieged, and basically they were in peril. And instead of mounting a dragon and going and rescuing him and whatnot, he dies.
Yeah.
So whether it was that hardship that caused him to fall ill again, or Visenya's presence to say maybe he made some. Again, he was showing that he wasn't going to go rescue them, and she said, "That's it. It's time for your reign is over," and she ends him, which is crazy.
Yeah. To
think about, So yeah, it's kind of a sad little, reign there, I guess. It's so you had the three little rebellions that kind of crop up, and then he doesn't handle those well. Bunch of issues with the marriages, and then He's super indecisive, has to flee King's Landing, which makes you wonder what happened there in King's Landing. I think we find out a little bit of that in the next chapter with Maegor.
Yeah, so I might go ahead and jump into the cool connections now, since it's just about the High Septons kind of in general.
Yep.
Because next week we'll be doing, for our World of Ice and Fire study, Maegor the First. And Maegor has a fun little time coming back to Westeros where he'll... bring back old Balerion and he's gonna go check out. He's gonna go investigate this this new citadel, this Sept of Remembrance, as it's called.
Yeah,
and so the High Septons in general, they're the head of the faith of the Seven. Historically, the High Septon rules the Starry Sept in Old Town. However, after the invasion of Aegon Targaryen, the High Septon at the time threw his support behind Aegon, and the position was eventually relocated to King's Landing. The High Septon, they're the most devout people. They usually hang out in the Great Sept of Baelor in King's Landing, a vast building of white marble with 7 crystal towers. Kind of said that already. The High Septon was not especially beholden to the Targaryens and was often a dangerous rival to them until the reign of Maegor the Cruel. So we'll get to that. And then, of course, in the show and the books, we see them kind of coming back to power when Tommen becomes king. You see Cersei's Walk of Shame, and it doesn't happen in the book. We don't know if she blows up the Sept of Baelor.
Right, we don't know that.
We don't know that. But there were a handful of Septons, and they all kind of do their own things. The High Septon should be known here that the High Septon actually wears a great crown made of crystal and gold while performing their duties. So they're wearing crowns.
Wow,
that should tell you something.
That should tell you something for sure.
And it is also known that the High Septons are actually picked traditionally by the kings.
Yeah.
This is most notable during the reign of Baelor the Blessed, who had a stoneworker and later an 8-year-old boy chosen for the office.
Yeah, interesting. Very interesting.
And
it's interesting how, like you mentioned later, just how, I don't know, it's crazy that the Seven, right, this faith is so absolute. They mention in Valeria that, is it Valeria or just Essos, right? That there's this idea, there's many gods, right? And maybe you feared your god, but I think it was Valeria where they allowed many different gods, but they didn't fear any god. And here they fear the Seven,
right?
Like they can't. It's like this religious law that you just can't go against it. You can't upset the the powers that be in the religious cult.
Right.
So anyways, very interesting. Plays a big role. So all right, anything else in the Maester study?
Nope, that's it.
I think we're good.
Yep. So let's go ahead and dive into the main chapter.
Yeah, here we go. So we'll go ahead and recap chapter 11, Daenerys 2, and then I'll do the summary for chapter 12.
Yeah, so last week we were reading Daenerys' second chapter, in which she has her wedding with Khal Drogo, which was not a dull affair because there were at least a dozen Dothraki deaths, I believe. And then she receives some gifts. She receives, some books, history of Westeros. Maybe it's the book we're reading. From Sir Jorah Mormont. And then she receives, a horse from Khal Drogo. And then her and Khal Drogo kind of have their own bedding ceremony, which is quite different from the show. And
Okay, cool. So that's where we came from. Now we are diving into chapter 12, Eddard 2. And in this chapter, we start off early in the morning, and Ned is summoned by the king and asked to take off with him. They need a good ride, right? And they're going to go out. They have many things that they want to discuss, or that Robert would like to discuss with Ned, one in particular, but just wanted to get away. There's been a Rider in the Night by Varys. Varys has sent a message to the king that he needs to be thinking about as he is traveling back to King's Landing. And along their way, they talk about several important things, which we'll get to, and you kind of see Robert and Ned's relationship. We even get some history as to how they may have maybe disagreed on this, on how to handle this current matter, and how they've disagreed on handling the slaying of Elia Martell and her children back in the day. So that is what we are into today. So let's start. Do you have just one big thing that you wanted to pull out, or anything in particular?
Yeah. So
I always kind of forget to do that sometimes, but
that's okay.
I got several.
Yeah, my one specific quote I want to take from here, and there was a lot you could take out, but I don't know. It was just I just kind of viewed this one. I think this speaks mostly to Robert's character, and there actually is a big difference between his character in the show and the books. Yep. In that in the books he definitely does seem more of like a fool.
In the books?
In the books.
Okay.
I think they kind of play it up a little bit more in the books.
Okay.
But I do, the king said. What do you say, Ned? Just you and me, 2 vagabond knights on the king's road, our swords at our sides, and the gods know what in front of us. And maybe a farmer's daughter or a tavern wench to warm our beds tonight. Would that we could, Ned said, but we have duties now, my liege, to the realm, to our children, I to my lady wife, and you to your queen. We were not the boys we were. And really, with the thing I like about that is it just shows that Robert Baratheon hates being king. He absolutely, you could just tell, and
yeah, he does.
He absolutely hates being king. He just wants to. I think he would have been a lot happier just being a lord. He would have been much happier had someone else taken the throne instead of him.
Well, yeah, and I think it just comes down to that's what you do when you take someone's, betrothed, and the lady that he loved, right, is you fight every man who stands in your way, and you're going to rule them all because you took her. I love actually in the show, he talks about conquering the 7 kingdoms, and all of that, everything that he did couldn't fill the hole that her death, left inside of him. And I really like that piece. It shows that he really, so some people say it's the idea that, well, he just couldn't have, it's just the one thing he never had or never got. I think she's someone who could have, would have tamed him. Yeah. He still would have been wild and crazy and stuff, but so is she. There's rumors that she's the Knight of the Laughing Tree, right? So, she's spontaneous. I don't know. She has that energy that maybe he would have had. And I think they would have been great. Yeah. Together. So, and it's just, it's crazy. So anyways, something I for some reason I always tend to jump to the end of the chapter, but it's something that jumped out to me. A man could not always be where he belonged. Yeah. And so Ned says that, or it's this thought that he's having as he's talking about where he should be and what he should be doing. And it already mentions that he belonged with Catelyn in her grief and with Bran and different things. But I just thought it tells you where... But
that's not even really he really belonged.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
Right. And that's
he only belonged there because his brother... Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Yep.
And then the other part is, right, exactly. Where does he truly belong? A man could not always be where he belonged, though. So anyways, we'll get to that at the very end, I guess. But just to kind of dive back into some of the beginning here, this ride that they take is very beautiful. I think it's a very nice, it's a cool, crisp morning. To me, it seemed like, I don't know about to you, like Ned was like, they're still in his country. Right. He doesn't really want to take a ride through it, but Robert does. Right. And also it shows you that Robert has learned something. There are ears in his own camp.
Yeah, he says that, yeah.
Right? So he this news that he wants to talk to Eddard about, they've got to go take a ride. Yeah. To sort of, talk about this. So, but just the scenery and the way things are laid out is really neat. You actually get something, you were probably going to talk about this, but I'm going to mention it. As they write out the barrows of the first men, they come across this piece that I hadn't really noticed, but it's the grave. They said there are a lot of these barrows. Yeah, because
they said the north is so old that like everywhere you go, there's pretty much barrows.
Right. I think it's just because it's vast and the people haven't either cultivated it or built up other, like a lot of their holds are ancient. You know what I mean? We saw in the Dunk and Egg series, Butterwell's place laid. I mean, didn't they tear down his castle? Didn't they because it just to wipe the idea of a Blackfire rebellion off the map? Didn't they do that? I think that was right. I could be wrong, so somebody fact check me on that. But I think Butterwell's Keep back in the day in the Dunk and Egg series was just wiped off the map.
Yeah, because Bloodraven does not put up with any of that stuff.
Right. So that kind of stuff didn't happen necessarily up in the north, as far as I know. And they've got a lot of old ancient keeps, and so then it's vast. But there's a lot of these graveyards, little mounds that you can see, these little barrows that Ned just describes those. And I was like, I never really, caught that or noticed that that those are there. So the dead, clearly visible, right? So, what do you got?
Yeah, I mean, just looking at some more. So then it kind of gets into the news, and do you remember Sir Jorah Mormont? Would that I might forget him, Ned said bluntly. The Mormonts of Bear Islands were an old house, proud and honorable, but their lands were cold and distant and poor. Sir Jorah had tried to swell the family's coffers by selling some poachers to a Tyroshi slaver. As the Mormonts were bannermen to the Starks, his crime had dishonored the North. Ned had made the long journey west to Bear Island, only to find when he arrived that Jorah had taken ship beyond the reach of ice and the king's justice. 5 years has passed since then. And then, we find out that Sir Jorah is over there kind of spying with Daenerys. And that's kind of something we forget about because it's not really mentioned.
In the series?
Well, it is, but
it's not till later, though.
It's not till later, right?
Yeah. Now, it makes sense, I guess, because here, as you and I are doing our book to show comparison, which will be on patreon.com, Anthony.
Nice little plug there.
Yeah. Well, basically, so in that we've had a couple of chapters where we've seen Jorah Mormont, right, with Daenerys, and so we don't really necessarily know that he's spying on her,
right,
out the gate. We just know he's been exiled,
right.
So now we figure out sort of why and that he has a role, and it kind of makes sense in the way that they present it in HBO, but it's still is what it is. So yeah, Ned was going to take his head. It sounds like. Sounds like he was going to bring ice, and he was literally going to.
Yeah, he's not going to put up with it.
No, so he is exiled completely, and it sounds like House Mormont is not that wealthy. They're
a tiny little house,
and so he was
50. I think like 53 bannermen is what Lyanna Mormont gives Jon Snow.
Yeah. So it makes you realize that to keep up with the needs of his wife, that and her riches or whatever it was that she needed, he was really desperate and made some really poor choices.
Yeah.
And that's his shortcoming, is that he's a lover, he wants to give and make that person, happy and stuff. So, and his first wife was a taker.
Yeah.
So, but anyways, so they start to kind of then talk about the
news.
Yeah, the news basically that the Daenerys Targaryen has wed some Dothraki horse lord.
Yeah.
Okay, and so at first,
well, and the interesting thing is that this is the first time we hear of people knowing about Daenerys outside of Essos, which is kind of a big deal, and it's kind of something that it's like you don't really think about as like a big deal because it's kind of like, oh, whatever, because you're learning all these new characters. But the second time through, you're kind of like, oh, this is kind of a big deal.
Kind of a big deal that they know about them and they're monitoring. They know him they know of Viserys as the Beggar King,
right?
And
remember, it's Lord Varys that presents this information.
Yes,
which is kind of interesting because why would Lord Varys present this information? It doesn't seem like. I mean, I'm sure that they're like, we want you to keep tabs on, on Daenerys, but I
don't know
why.
I have often struggled too. So when you find out that the closeness between, I guess between he and Illyrio, right?
Yeah.
And what they have going on in Pentos, I don't know. I really don't know.
Is it just to kind of throw people off to make it seem like he's not secretly in the back of his head got this like plan?
Because he has another plan. Maybe he is trying to get the other two out of the way,
right?
And trying to bring back, whether it's Aegon Targaryen or Blackfire,
right?
Maybe that he is trying to get them out of the way. I don't necessarily know. And we know in the show, then he goes and works for Daenerys.
Yeah.
So I mean, it is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But he serves the realm. So I think as things pop up, Varys is sort of like navigating what the realm needs type of thing.
Okay.
So they were talking about sending, Daenerys a wedding gift.
Right.
Yeah, right. And then they mentioned that they start to talk about the slaying of the children.
Yeah.
And...
Yeah, right here. He remembered the angry words that had exchanged when Tywin Lannister had presented Robert with the corpses of Rhaegar's wife and children as a token of fealty. Ned had named that murder. Robert had called it war.
Yeah. Pretty big distinction. I mean, let's think about it for a second. So when Robert, when you capture, you have prisoners of war. Did he kill his prisoners of war? You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. That like they're and this is women and children,
right?
I know that sometimes during war you'd go in and you'd plunder a city or whatever, and there was rape and stuff like that going on, which is equally as awful and as terrible. But they drew the line, I guess, sometimes maybe at murder, right? All out murder. Or maybe they didn't, and it was actually just like if people got in their way, they murdered them. The city is Tywin's.
Yeah.
There's no resistance necessarily. They're just killed.
Yeah.
So, anyways, I don't want to get too much into that because I have a lot of ideas and thoughts on how this is presented to us and how it's glossed over.
Yeah.
So, anyways, but yeah, I mean, definitely Ned calls it murder and Robert called it war. And even Jon Arryn tried to speak some sense to Robert, and he doesn't really hear it. He won't hear it from anybody.
Yeah. He's
just sort of enraged. And Ned says later, here that he knows when Robert gets like this that there's really no getting around. He's just going to do this is who he is, and there's really no winning at this point. You kind of just have to let it go, and then maybe you can come back to it later on, and he kind of eases up. But when he's in this fit, it's just like somebody escalates. You really can't, can't go there at the same rate with them. So, now this really divides Ned and Robert, and he leaves to fight the wars in the South.
Yeah.
So, and basically they aren't reconciled until Lyanna's death, and he brings her, back.
Yeah. And
it's that death that actually, kind of brings those two back together. The love for, his sister. Mm-hmm. So because otherwise he left and he was like done, not having it, very disappointed probably in his friend. And this has been something that's been a problem between them for years. Mm-hmm. Okay. What else you got?
And so then it just goes on, and I will kill. Robert says, "I'll kill every Targaryen I can get my hands on until they are as dead as their dragons, and then I will piss on their graves." Ned knew better than to defy him when the wrath was on him, and the years had not quenched Robert's thirst for revenge. No words of this could help. "You can't get your hands on this one, can you?" he said quietly. So that's a big difference between the show and the book. In the show, he's just point blank, like it's almost defiantly as opposed to quietly.
Yeah.
And then he goes on to saying maybe there's other ways we can kill them, like hopefully they get the pox or something like that. And then talks about how Jon Arryn wasn't able to kind of calm him either. And then he says, "This Khal Drogo is said to have 100,000 men in his horde. What would you say to that?" He would say that even 1,000,000 Dothraki are no threat to the realm so long as they remain on the other side of the narrow sea. The barbarians have no ships. They fear and hate the open sea. Mm-hmm. And then Robert, kind of freaks out, and he's like, "The king shifted uncomfortably in his saddle. Perhaps there are ships to be had in the free cities, though. I tell you, Ned, I do not like this marriage. There are still those in the Seven Kingdoms who would call me the usurper."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. And you know what I was going to do, actually, and I forgot to do it, but is to, and I'll have you look this up for me if you don't mind. Just
sure.
Like look up the Battle of the Trident. And when you do, you'll see the opposing houses and see who's on each side. Because it's interesting. I think those would be the houses that sided with Rhaegar during that battle that we hear about still have, the Targaryen banners. They didn't. Maybe they've taken them down, but they just put them in a closet. They're still there.
So the Robert's army, forces from the north, the Vale of Arryn, the Riverlands, House Tully, and many subject lords took the sides of the rebels, while other houses such as House Derry, Mooten, and Rhaegar, some of them had personal ties to Targaryen, took up the royal cause. House Freys, the largest of the houses sworn to House Tully, was slow to gather their forces.
Sure they were.
Some of the Storlands through Robert Rebellion was the Lord of Storm End and a central figure of the rebellion. Most of the Stormlords were trapped in the south and were badly bloodied by Ashford and the siege at Storm's End and such. Their contribution north of the Stormlands appeared to have been limited. The royal army, 10,000 Dornishmen, survivors of the Battle of the Bells. These may have included loyal Riverlords, Stormlords, and Valemen. Houses of the Crown Lands, including lords of Crackclaw Point, and a sizable host from the Reach. I believe the Martells.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, yeah. So, like some of the loyalists were like how these are Vale houses, but House Derry, Goodbrook, Mooten. Some of those houses. So we'll get to some of those because they're names that come up. And there is an interesting, I got to find this, where it talks about as on their travels south, they come to a place in which something, it was, I can't remember where this is at, but you had just read the whole book again. The Targaryen banners are like, just, you could almost still see where they had, been on the wall and, what have you. I don't know. And they were just put away somewhere. I think Tyrion runs across them, sees the House Targaryen banner is still in this person's house. So, anyways, just interesting. Thought that was because they do call him the usurper, and you could hear people saying that in the privacy of their own house, and drinking a few beers or what have you, and then talking about that. But
even in Dunk and Egg in the Mystery Night where. Like Egg is baffled that there are still people, or like he's just like, well, he's a traitor. He fought for the Black Dragon.
Yes.
And some people are like, and a lot of people were just like, it's okay. It was war. It's not that big of a deal. And people are and he's like baffled by it.
Right. Exactly. Because they're completely, it was a kingdom to like, everyone is completely split 50-50.
Yeah.
During that first Blackfire.
And that's probably what was this rebellion. It was like, because a lot of people were like, you think anybody really probably south of the neck was like, well, this is those Northerners are so, because even still, it's like the Northerners are just different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
yeah, and their in their rebellion, because they probably looked at it a lot as like the Vale and the Northerners and stuff like that. So
yep, for sure. So, all right, so now this conversation, switches to the Warden of the East.
Yes,
and I thought this was really interesting. So I want you guys, if you're listening, to kind of pay attention to this part, because did you think this was interesting?
Yeah, this is a big difference between the show and the books.
Yeah.
In the books, so he says that he wants to name Jaime Lannister Warden of the East.
Right. Instead of Stannis.
Right.
His brother.
Yeah, and in the books, Robert is far more courteous and kind of he just remembers, he's like, it's my wife's family. Like,
right.
I can't do that, which you don't really see in the book. The only time you see it in the show is when he tells Ned to kill the direwolf. When Cersei is like, and what of the beast that hurt your son? And he's like, it's a wolf, kill it. Like, take care of it. Other than that, he doesn't really show any. In fact, if anything, he's always talking about how much he hates the Lannisters and how they're always around him.
Exactly. He's just, it irritates him that they're all around him.
But in this, he's always far more kind of courteous to his family.
Right. Well, and also, he seems like like you said, he kind of seems like more foolish. Tywin Lannister shows up and he goes on to talk about what Tywin did and what Jaime was doing on the throne. How can you be so? How can you not see? It's almost like he's still trying to persuade him that the Lannisters just did this because it benefit. They're out for themselves. Yeah, they're not.
They showed up. They showed up at the last second and then betrayed. They're like
right.
And then even if you want to do that, he's like, well, it's war. Whatever. Mm-hmm. But then he even goes on to talk about like Jaime and Ned says that, but he was sworn to protect the king, and he stabs him in the back.
Right, exactly. So they're kind of going back and forth on whether what Jaime did, there at the end of the rebellion was a good thing or a bad thing.
Right.
And Ned feels like he's about to reveal something pretty big. But before we get to that, though, the Warden of the East. I need to look into this, and some of you who are listening can help me with this, but I thought since he had given up, because they talk about the fact that he could be the Warden of the East and the Warden of the West. Did you catch that? So they talked about how his father is Warden of the West, and they want to give Jaime Lannister the title of Warden of the East. Well, he is in the Kingsguard, so he really... but there's a difference. It's a difference between maybe show and book, and I need to look into it more because I just caught it this chapter really that he could be given that title and possibly rule there. I mean, again,
it's a temporary thing,
right? But he said though later on. So let me see if I can.
Because in the chapter where they're in the crypts. And he's saying, I'll find someone until the boy comes of age. Because he doesn't want to give it to Robb and Aaron because he's so young.
Yeah. So here I was reading. Kingslayer, Ned said, the rumors were true then. He rode on dangerous ground now. He knew. An able and courageous man, no doubt, he said carefully. But his father is Warden of the West, Robert. In time, Sir Jaime will succeed to that honor. So it's an honor. We're talking more about the Warden of the West, not necessarily, back on Castle Rock ruling as head of House Lannister. No one man should hold both East and West. He left unsaid his real concern, that the appointment would put half the armies of the realm into the hands of the Lannisters. So, being Warden of the North, he is in Eddard is in control of those armies.
Yeah,
that is his job. So they've really split the kingdom into those different.
Right.
There's 7 kingdoms, but then you've got certain people who are ruling over big regions of the armies to kind of keep things in order.
Right.
Which is interesting. So if you have a chance, go look up what the title of Warden really means. So because you have, again, like I said, you've got. It's just different. They're different than being head of, your particular region, I guess. They've kind of divided the kingdom into 4 regions versus, the 7 kingdoms, right? Am I right about that?
Yeah, because you have Warden of the
East, of the West, of the North, I guess of the South. I've not really heard that though. I'd have to. Maybe there's more to it than that. Anyways, so I thought that was interesting that he said that he could. Sir Jaime will succeed to that honor. No man should hold both East and West. So he goes on to say, Robert kind of says that I will fight that battle when the enemy appears on the field. He said stubbornly. At that moment, Lord Tywin looms eternal as Castle Rock. So I doubt that Jaime will be succeeding anytime soon. Don't vex me about this, Ned. The stone has been set. So I got to look into it more, but I just kind of wondered, why are they even talking that Jaime, would be succeeding to his father's seat? I guess is my question, because he's not hand of the king or anything right now.
So it looks here like that there are just specifically 4 wardens.
Okay.
So North, South, East, and West.
Okay.
So North, I guess, maybe North also includes. In the ruling realm, the Iron Islands.
It may. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Do they say who the wardens are, the current wardens or anything?
Yes. So you have Jon Arryn, Eddard Stark, Mace Tyrell, and Tywin Lannister, I guess kind of right before the books begin.
Okay. So say it again. So you had Tywin Lannister as Warden of the West.
West. South is Mace Tyrell. That sounds like that's going to go great.
Yeah.
Eddard Stark as the North, and then Jon Arryn as the Warden of the East.
East, exactly. So they're trying to fill. So Jon Arryn's son is the one who they're thinking about. He's a sickly boy. They want to give him that title.
So he is still Lord of the Vale.
Exactly. He is. He's still Lord of the Vale.
But he doesn't mean he has to be
But commander of those armies. And really, that's why Robert doesn't want to give that to a boy in case he actually would have to call upon the Warden of the East to command troops and stuff. Then who would it actually be? You know what I mean? That's the person who's got to gain, I bet you there's responsibilities with that title, with your understanding who your lesser commanding officers are and things like that. So yeah, to have 2 or to have one half of the kingdom in the hands of the Lannisters is troubling to, to Eddard Stark. Just doesn't think that's right.
Right. Well, there's other titles too, like House Tully is Lord Paramount of the Trident, right? And so there's these other titles too, so.
Right, inside of those four. Yeah, exactly. Yep, you're right about that. But yeah, because you've got
It's never super clear. They just
right, but as it is a little clearer now that you've talked about this.
Now that this is kind of the nice thing about doing a reread where we come back and
it does make a little bit of sense. So I just kind of wanted to point that out to people who are listening because I think it is super interesting. Because I was confused as to, he can command the troops, Jaime can, but then there's just a little bit about him possibly going back to Casterly Rock, and I don't think he can do that. So, but I don't really know. I have to look into the Kingsguard's vows to see if they give up claim to, lands and titles and stuff like that.
I thought they did, but it could be a show thing.
But it could be a show thing. So anyways, we'll move on. We'll come back to it for a little bit, and Matt can kind of look it up a little bit. So, Your Grace, may I speak frankly, says Robert. Robert says, I seem unable to stop you. And
right here, the Kingsguard are sworn for life and are forbidden from owning land, taking a wife, or fathering children, although they can have non-hereditary commands such as being a warden or hand of the king.
There you go. Yep. So they can be warden, and
So Jaime Lannister could theoretically become warden of the West, which would still kind of put him in charge, and he'd probably, Yeah,
I think that's the thing. He could be warden of the West, and maybe
also hand of the king.
Well, but if he's warden of the West, maybe he could then be housed at Casterly Rock and still be a part of the Kingsguard. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like if you go do that, I feel like the Kingsguard don't always have to be in King's Landing.
Right.
They also can be you almost imagine them as commanders and generals.
Right. Type
of thing too, which is definitely how Rhaegar used them during that battle. So okay, cool. That was fun. That was good. Now let's see. Okay, so Ned says, "Can you trust Jaime Lannister?" And this is where you said it. He says, "He is my wife's twin, a sworn brother of the Kingsguard. His life and fortune and honor are all bound to mine." And this is where you get into the, Eddard starts talking about. They both kind of talk about Aerys and the things that he did, and how terrible he was, and and Ned's pointing out that he is bound to Aerys Targaryen. And look at what he did to him, stabbing him in the back. And I don't remember exactly where this is. I'm just going to go off a recall here, which helps me. When Ned and his forces get there, Robert Baratheon is injured. It says he was injured in this chapter. It mentions that during the Battle of the Trident, he's injured by Rhaegar Targaryen, and so Ned moves forward with his forces. Tywin was there. Aerys. The Mad King opens his gates and welcomes him in, right? When Eddard gets there, he's still mounted. He rides right into the throne room, and he sees, a 17-year-old Jaime Lannister sitting with his lion, helm, sitting, with his feet up, maybe possibly on the Iron Throne.
Yeah, if you go to the page, there's always a lot of art that shows him just kind of
chilling there,
just lounging on it.
Right, and you're in a room. So there were Lannister forces. There were also Lannister banners flying in King's Landing when he gets there, which is interesting, right? And so as he gets there, Ned takes his forces right into the throne room, and the Lannister forces fall back. And kind of retreat a little bit,
right? Which I always found interesting because why didn't if the plan was to just take it, you would have to imagine that Ned's forces and all these forces that just fought at the Trident would be pretty tired, and you'd have to imagine you've now got a stronghold in the castle. Couldn't you have just been like, nope, it's ours? Why do you think they stood down?
Well, because you had the warden of, again, back to the wardens, the north and the east, and the Dornish forces were basically demoralized and retreat back to Dorne, and so then you have the warden of the west essentially against two other, so they were outnumbered, for sure, and it's also one of those things like they waited to see the outcome of that battle,
All right, and then
seeing that they were beat.
just do it. Yeah, then just do it. They wanted it
right
political.
because as you said earlier, Tywin brings. I think at that point you've got the hostages, and they kill Elia Martell and her children.
Yep.
Once they figure out what happens to Rhaegar.
Right, and then they say, "Oh, well, you should marry Cersei afterwards." But that's only after they found out that Lyanna's dead. Because what was their plan if Lyanna Stark had been alive?
Oh, I think it was just to sort of they still wanted to just be, in charge of the West. They wanted to be on the winning side. That's what I think their true plan was there. Although Jaime being 17, Ned's kind of saying they have real ambitions for the.
But do you think they knew
that Lyanna was going to die?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a good question.
Because that just raises a lot of stakes.
Let's see.
Cersei did go get some prophecy because it said that one day you'll be queen. And how would she have become queen if Lyanna had been alive?
Yeah.
And she was supposed to marry Rhaegar at one point.
Trying to figure. Okay. I wasn't going to do this. Okay. I wasn't going to do this, but I'm going to do it now. I honestly had a thought earlier, and I was going to talk to you about this after we stopped recording, but I'm going to do it now.
Okay.
Tywin, when he brings, when he presents Elia Martell and Rhaegar's children there, I believe if you think about this, when they captured King's Landing, as I just said moments ago, they're captured. They didn't just go in there, and it's not like they were holding up their hands, or like they were taking up arms fighting, right? They're probably held up inside of a room somewhere, and they get them, and they have to decide what to do. During that moment, during that time, if Lord Varys is there, this is where you get into was Varys there before, and maybe they two possible scenarios. Varys working with the Lannisters to say, we're going to, he wants them killed, and so he gives them up to, Tywin or whatever, or he helps smuggle the kids out of there.
Right.
We've talked about him smuggling the kids out in some way, and then basically these kids were killed in a way in which you couldn't recognize them necessarily.
Right. They're also little kids, so it's hard to recognize.
Hard to tell, right? But they talk about in this chapter that Rhaenys was a little bit older and was underneath her bed, and they pulled her out of her bed, from underneath her bed. And then they brought
and also remember
Aegon.
Also remember that during this sack is when not Rhaella, but is that her name? Rhaella Targaryen and Viserys flee to Dragonstone.
Right. Yeah, and Daenerys is born.
Yeah.
Right. So my thinking,
Daenerys was born a little bit later, but
right. Yes. Yeah. But on Dragonstone. Yeah. But my thinking is though with Varys there and this whole piece with Tywin, he has to decide. So you're asking the question about Cersei Lannister, right? Maybe he knows from Varys what's going on with Lyanna, and he figures out that, she is dead or going to die in childbirth or something, perhaps. I don't know. Because she doesn't die until later, because Ned goes south, and she is actually alive after the war and when he dies in childbirth. Air quote there, dies in childbirth. Yeah. But what does he learn? What does Tywin learn when he's in King's Landing? I think he learns a lot. And maybe here's the other scenario is if Varys was successful and he gets the children out of King's Landing, then Tywin says, okay, I'm going to kill 2 kids and make it look like we're going to present what we believe are Rhaegar's children. Maybe Elia Martell was actually there and they were able to kill her and present her. And that then makes the other 2 look legit. And Varys is a sneaky son of a gun who would be willing to maybe possibly sacrifice Elia Martell, but not the children, and make some bargain, with Tywin. Seems like he would do something like that. So I have got more to that, but I need to kind of pencil it down and think about it more because, I think ultimately their idea is that they just want to hold the West and be on the winning side. But I think they learned a lot there when they sacked King's Landing. So, okay, let me see what else we can get into here in this chapter. Let's see. Robert, he's impatient with everything that Ned is saying. So, Ned basically believes he's divulging this secret about what he saw Jaime Lannister doing, and look, the Lannisters really ultimately just want the Iron they want to rule supreme over the 7 kingdoms,
right?
And Robert just doesn't necessarily believe that, right? So, let's see. You were not there, Ned said, bitterness in his voice. Troubled sleep was no stranger to him. He had lived his lies for 14 years, yet they still haunted him at night. There was no honor in that conquest. So this was one of the things that I was going to pull out as my, at the beginning. Yeah, kind of a quote of the week. They're talking about the treachery of the Targaryens. They're going back and forth here. Robert says, see the Angles, but Lannister paid them back in kind. It was no less than they deserved. I shall not trouble my sleep over it. And then Ned, this is where he talks about his troubled sleep and how he wasn't a stranger to that. But this line was one line here, and as I do, that Gur and what he does with one line, one word
Absolutely.
means a lot. And he says, he had lived his lies for 14 years, yet they still haunted him at night.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Well, let me back you up with another line, Ez.
Okay.
Sir Ezra.
Yeah.
You avenged Lyanna at the Trident, Ned said, halting beside the king. Promise me, Ned, she had whispered. That did not bring her back. So he throws in the promise me, Ned line right in the middle of that thing to subtly remind us of her death. It could, there's no other reason to have that promise me, Ned, in there. She whispered. There's no reason to have it in there. You can get your point, as a writer, you can get your point across.
Absolutely.
By just saying you avenged her at the Trident.
Exactly. But that's a lie. That's the thing.
Exactly.
That's the lie he has been living for 14 years.
It's right in our face.
It's right there.
It's right there.
So, I mean, it's great. So he had been lying to himself for 14 years, troubled sleep, etc. You avenged Lyanna at the Trident. And then as soon as he says that, there's the haunting. Promise me, Ned, that you'll keep doing what you're doing right there, which is to lie and guard this secret with your life. Mm-hmm. Unreal. It's unreal. And it's just you could literally, if you're listening to the chapter or reading the chapter, you could literally slip right by it and not even really realize what the impact of that is. And
that's the nice thing about doing it. It's another scene which we'll get to later. It's in the show. I think it's portrayed a little bit better in the show than it is the books, where Barris and Selmy and Ned are talking about oh god, now I can't remember his name, but the Knight of the Vale who dies at the tournament, and he had John Aaron Squire, and and they're talking about Barris and Selmy's talking to Ned Stark about his father and like being great warriors, and they're going back and forth. But the second that Barris and Selmy says what the Mad King did to your father was a shame, Ned Stark immediately changes the subject.
Yes. Yep.
And is like, that knight back there.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's another thing where you got to like pause for a second, like, what really happened there?
Exactly. So honestly, I covered most of the rest of this, which this all kind of talks about what happened at that throne room. Was Jaime Lannister just tired? Was he sitting on the throne because he's tired or whatever? And it doesn't seem to really worry Robert very much. He's not very interested in it, and kind of says, "Is that all? This is well known." Even that piece about Jaime Lannister, that doesn't really bother me. It is what it is. So. So let's see. So anyways, he kicked his horse back in motion and galloped over the barrow, raining earth down behind him. So anyways, he's done with it. Come on, let's ride. You used to know how to. I want to feel the wind in my hair again. Going back to the whole, like, we're just out and about. We've discussed this enough. Right. They didn't really get necessarily. They gave us a lot of history. Clearly Ned is against killing Daenerys Targaryen, and brings that up again as one of their old arguments, and tries to convince him, about this. And
is it because he thinks just murdering a young child is a problem, or is it because he has a secret Targaryen?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. All of that, you just don't know, right? So he definitely though did speak out against the murdering of Elia Martell. Right. I mean, an innocent, and you just, I think it's huge. So okay, so that's basically it there. Let me read the last bit here. Let's see. He was no Jon Arryn to curb the wildness of his king and to teach him wisdom. Robert would do what he pleased, as he always had, and nothing Ned could say or do would change that. He belonged in Winterfell. He belonged with Catelyn in her grief and with Bran. A man could not always be where he belonged, though. Resigned, Eddard Stark put his boots into his horse and set off after the king. So, yeah, a man could not always be where he belonged. So anyway, just really, I liked this chapter. Really liked this chapter a lot. I thought there was a lot of cool stuff in it, some history, for you guys, and some of the politics and the setup of the realm, So yeah. All right, we've kind of covered our cool connections, I believe.
Yes,
for the most part. Okay. All right. So there we are. So we are into send a raven. You can send those ravens to BTK Cast. You can give us a call at 614-547-2350, and we have a raven.
Yes.
Today, and we've pulled out this raven. We've saved some of them for Follow Up Friday, but here we go. We got a good one. You want to read this one, Matt?
Yeah. Hi guys. I believe it's sirs and lords, but
we'll let it stand. Sam, we'll let it stand.
We're just messing. But seriously, currently listening to you guys. You guys read my theory, and I wish I could be there discussing it with you. We had read his. This was a super long theory,
detailed, lots of good stuff. Yeah, but this was the last one. We just did this on previous Friday.
Yes.
Yeah, about the Night King.
Yes, there's so much I want to add that would not fit into the email, but I'm glad that you thought it was worth discussing. I think Matt, again, Sir Matt, but I'm just messing. But seriously, Matt nailed it in the key questions, and I thought the theory explained. What do the northern words really mean? Mm-hmm. Why are the Night's Watch so called? Who's the third head of the dragon? Can't wait for you to come back with these other ideas on these. Now listening to your thoughts on Jon and Dany's baby, and I have one more rabbit hole for you.
Good.
What if Craster was foreshadowing for Jon and Dany's baby? Jon having to offer his son to save the realm. Would be seriously bittersweet. Regards, Sam.
Yeah. Thanks, Sam. We appreciate the Raven, and appreciate the theory, everything that you sent us last week too. So keep that coming.
Yeah. We did have some people comment and say that was a really interesting theory.
Yeah, they did absolutely. So now, as for Jon and Dany's baby, right? Possible baby, you do get a little foreshadowing also when Jon tries to save a baby.
Yes.
As well too. And so isn't that interesting that he would possibly have to save a baby but then give up a baby, to save the realm type of thing. That would definitely be ironic, right? That would be, interesting. So what do you think, Matt? I mean, is it
I don't know. That's something I keep coming back.
Would it be bittersweet?
It would definitely be bittersweet. I actually do believe there is going to be something to do with
a child.
With the child. Yeah. And I think in the show, maybe it might not be explained as much. The Talking Thrones theory about it's the 100th baby and it was supposed to be that seems a little far-fetched. But I do believe there's something about it because Craster was offering these babies up to the Night King, and the Night King takes them and turns them into White Walkers.
Yes,
not apparently whites.
Right.
Yeah, so there is something there with that I believe will be explained in the books.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a much bigger thing. So then that does come down to, I don't know if I'm trying to think here. I don't know if it's going to have something to do with the White Walkers, but I do believe it could have something to do with maybe Cersei's baby. Like maybe there's a tie between Daenerys and Cersei's baby, and it would be really interesting if it was something where they had to sacrifice a baby, because that's how Daenerys's that's how the first book ends. Remember, she gives up her. You have to. Only life can pay for life.
That's right.
So there is something there. So what if Melisandre were to die, and then so Jon couldn't be resurrected. Then Jon actually dies.
Yeah.
Like maybe taking out Cersei. Maybe the Night King part comes second as opposed to the Cersei part. And so then Daenerys has to use blood magic from her baby, which she thought she would never have.
Yeah.
And now she does it to save Jon, so then Jon can fight the Night King
or something. Yeah.
Right. Or something like that. That's like that.
I get you. Yeah. I mean, I definitely think there's a lot of I need to think about this a little bit more, because you just brought up a really good point. Only life can play for life. And that Dany has gone through this before, and then Jon is kind of is trying to combat Melisandre, and sending, Mance Raider's baby with Sam and Gilly,
Right.
and then keeping Gilly's baby, which is dangerous, because that was one that's sought after by the Great Other, or the Night King. So there's that. So yeah, there's definitely a lot, and this whole story starts off with the killing of Elia Martell and her children, which is brought up multiple times, and is a super big deal. And some of these children, and then you've got Lyanna's possible offspring,
right? And all of these people who, when they were babies, their mothers or whatever died in childbirth. Tyrion's, Daenerys's, theoretically Jon's,
and you could say Cersei coming up too with her whole prophecy. Piece, which you talked about like last week or whatever.
The Valonqar prophecy. Yeah, we really need to dive into that. We actually had someone ask that we dive deeper into that. And
we will.
I had actually been doing a little research more into it, because Valonqar is Valyrian for little brother. And Jaime and Tyrion are both little brother to Cersei. So it could be either.
Okay.
Could be either of them.
Yeah. Okay. So, Sam, great question. And, those of you who are listening, and you want to talk about it when we post the weekly thread, leave us a comment, let us know, and we can discuss a little bit more in depth. I also like that he brought back the questions. What do the northern words really mean? Why are the Night's Watch so called? And who is the third head to the dragon? Those are the questions. And that we're thinking about, that we're trying to answer in that theory on Friday, and going forward, I think it's changed some of the way I look at this stuff.
Yeah.
So there's that. So, all right. Thanks, Sam. We appreciate it. On to Man the Wall.
Mm-hmm.
We said we would do this earlier. We've got some, we've got some folks we need tonight, my friend.
It's true.
I think it's time. It's time that we do this.
It is time. We have two of these. One of these is, I guess, more of the traditional one we'll be doing.
Right.
And the second is more of a custom one, which you are certainly open to doing. And for those of you who have taken the black, you are also entitled to a knighting ceremony.
That's right.
So even if you've sent us your Night's Watch vows, you are still entitled to a knighting ceremony.
Right. And what's interesting about that tier, taking the black, that one you need to. It's a little bit of extra work, and we apologize, but it's
you don't
fun.
have to if you don't want.
No, you don't have to. But if you want to have your voice heard on the show, it is fun to kind of say your vows, and say them in a sept, or you can say them in front of a heart tree, whatever you'd like. You can make that distinction, and we will play them on the show. So that takes a little bit of work, and you guys are sending us a voice file. But the knighting ceremony is basically. It's basically this. We're about to get into it here. So, do you want to do this one, Matt?
Yeah. Jared of House Gebhardt has sworn before the eyes of gods and men to defend those who cannot defend themselves, to protect all women and children, to obey his captains, his liege lord, and his king, to fight bravely when needed, and to do such other tasks that are laid upon him. However hard or humble or dangerous they may be, rise, Sir Jared of House Gebhardt.
Let's go.
Yeah.
I mean, let's go. And so we pulled this, from the text. There are a couple different ways.
I believe Sir Jared is the brown bear.
Yes.
His sigil is going. We're working on that. Is going to be a brown bear on a red field. So,
yeah, I like it. I absolutely like it. So, Sir Jared of House Gebhardt, we appreciate you manning the wall with us. And he is a hedge knight, and as a fellow hedge knight, I'm very happy to share my fire with him. I've got a little bit of mead left and some cheese. The meat's gone hard, but we can put it in some water and soften it up, my friend, and have a good little, good little meal.
Some salted beef.
Yes, yeah. And then we also have the second option, which again, this is a little bit more of a custom ceremony. You can send us an audio file and we will just play it. And so we'll take a quick listen here to Lord Adam Parker.
Over 1,000 years ago, House Parker has sworn itself to the Starks, always remaining loyal. The Starks have returned our fealty with justness and the ability to read our favorite books. Well, shouldn't we be allowed to read and discuss our favorite books again? I didn't listen to second breakfast, and I will regret that until my dying day. A man can only admit when he was wrong and ask for forgiveness.
There is nothing to forgive, my lord.
And this is what I say to those southern book clubs. I, Lord Adam of House Parker, first of his name, reader of books, the young bull, ward of White Harbor, warden of the White Knife, know no other podcast about the Song of Ice and Fire than this Bend the Knee podcast. There sits the only podcast I mean to bend my knee to, my lords. This sword is yours in exciting chapters and the boring, from this day until my last page.
Rise, Lord Adam Parker. You have sworn before the eyes of gods and men to defend those who cannot defend themselves, to protect all women and children, to obey your captains, liege lord, and your king, to fight bravely when needed, and do such other tasks that are laid upon you, however hard or humble or dangerous they may be. Rise, Adam Parker.
All right. So again, those ceremonies are a lot of fun. I like both options. Yeah. I will basically on patreon.com/bend the knee. I will send you a message, and if I don't hear from you, we'll just do a classic, ceremony. The other one that we have, which Matt and I are going to, and we'd like your feedback on this for the knighting ceremony. So we might put this on like a poll on Patreon for our patrons. But the other one is really neat. I like it. It's the one where basically you are charged in the name of the warrior to be brave, in the name of the father to be just, in the name of the mother I charge you to defend the young and the innocent, in the name of the maid I charge you to protect all women. I like that one a lot, but it's not finished.
Right.
In the text, I can't really find where it is finished. So it has 4 of the 7. So if some of you would like to draft up a possible finish to that, it would feel more authentic if we in our book club finished that. Right.
And if you are not someone who adheres to the 7, like
That's
myself,
right.
I'm more of an old god.
Let's go.
Or if you want to be a knight in the drowned god, there's they kind of have a different little ceremony they take. Actually, in the north, I don't believe there actually are knights.
Right, but Bran wants to be a knight.
He does.
Remember, that's Bran's whole thing. He wants to be a knight, and so that's why I like the one where that you've sworn, that before the eyes of gods and men. Okay, so gods, plural, could mean old, could mean new. It's very open-ended. When you get into in the name of the warrior, we're talking about the 7.
Right.
Okay? So if you want to avoid that one, that's fine. Not that the other one doesn't sort of pertain to the 7 and the faith. It does, but it's more of a, it's a less formal knighting ceremony.
Right.
And it can, I think Beric Dondarrion used that.
He probably did.
I think he used that. I could be wrong. I might have them mixed up, but he definitely, he knights, someone, which is pretty cool. We'll talk about that when we get there. So anyways, man the wall, guys. You can join both of those tiers, and we'll get you guys some cool stuff. Again, the first Black Council episode's coming too, and those are going to be, just so you have a taste of what those are like. Imagine the Maester's study, but imagine us honing in on one character,
one very specific event or
event. Yeah,
person, place, or thing.
Right, because on
it's a noun, right?
Yeah, it is.
Okay,
yes,
good.
Yeah.
Just challenging your English.
Yeah, it was a big and stuff. So anyways, okay, I think that's basically it for Man the Wall. You just feel free to join the discussion at facebook.com/Bend the Knee Podcast. We're going to continue to do all the good stuff that we do there. So I think it's time to say farewell, my friend.
Yeah, we want to thank you for playing the Game of Thrones. In our next episode, we will be discussing Chapter 13, Tyrion 2. We will see you in a week. And remember to hear me roar.